we met, there was power cut, and because of which our class couldn't get fully ended up as we used to do our classes basically. Anyways, just getting back to the past of our chapter. The chapter name already is known to you, Should Wizard Hit Mommy? And we had gone through major part of the story. Now there is a change in it, and that change actually we are going to notice here in the course of the story. The change that was that is to come in the story is the expected end of the story is not there. Like the happy ending generally we see in all the movies, and it is generally called the poetic justice sort of thing. That is, you would miss it over here, and you'll find something different over here in this story. Well, those slides which we had from the points as we wanted to learn. So that slide told us something about Roger Skunk meeting the wizard, and the wizard bringing out that change, desired change that Roger Skunk wanted. And his smell was quite awful, and that smell he wanted to replace it with something beautiful, and the smell of the roses. Well, that was all we had seen, and now today we are going to see these points, important points of the story, like Skunk's happiness. As soon as he gets changed into his better smell, smell of the roses, so his happiness and some of the reasons for that. Just into 1 minute we'll get into that mode of explaining through PPTs. And then second point is Joe's surprise, how she got surprised, and Roger Skunk's then getting his smell back, then Mother Skunk, Joe's opinion. Here I think in this point we will have to pay more attention to, because here we will find a clash between two people's opinion. One is the opinion of the mother, and another one the opinion of the opinion of the father who is telling the story, and the opinion of the daughter Joe who is listening to the story. One very, very important part of our story is this. And this is, well, the minor point is there, but the story ends with this kind of inclusion of events there in the story, and that is why even this point we will just see there is tension between Jack and Claire. So just in 30 minutes time, 30 seconds time I mean to say, we will get back to PPTs, and through that I'll explain to you. Maybe in the next classes I may not be using PPTs, because there are you able to see me now? I hope I am visible to you, and now I'll explain to you with the help of these PPTs. And I think in the last one we had seen this, this one. Jack tries hard to convince. Introduction, this we had seen. About characters also we had already seen, and also wizard asks Roger to pay some amount. This also we had seen. And next we had seen this one, Roger Skunk became happy. I think this was the last one which we had seen. So here the last point, and asked him to give Roger Skunk his original smell back. And for this actually the mother had already scolded him for the change of smell. Roger Skunk on his own, by his own wish, he got his smell changed to the smell of the roses, and that was actually not liked by the mother. Yeah. So having gone through the last point, I'll now pick up Joe's surprise over here. So Joe was surprised here because mother was unhappy, and the reason is very simple. A mother did not want her son to stand altogether different from the identity of the skunks. The skunks always smelled bad, so that was the identity of all the skunks. Mother did not want skunk to smell like any other object or any other thing, and therefore mother was little unhappy, and she took this fellow Roger skunk to the wizard to get it back, get the smell back. So Joe was surprised at that when father told mother was not happy, and he was taken back to the wizard in order to get his stinking smell back to the normalcy, and that made Joe shoot her eyes with surprise. So the first point here that we get is that Joe was surprised, and she felt that Roger skunk would again be lonely, because why she was little unhappy, because she felt this was something wrong that has taken place in the course of the story. According to her, because there was a beautiful smell that skunk got changed into all woodland creatures, all other animals, there in the forest. They were quite happy to become friends with Roger skunk, and this happiness, according to Joe, was the most correct happiness. This is all because of the group that we want to be always a part of. All the friends must like you, and they must accept you. That was something which according to Joe was quite so important, and therefore when this change was brought back to the original bad smell of skunk, she was little unhappy, and she had given her reaction to the father. Father, of course, had his own way of looking at the story. According to him, this is something what all the parents want, and therefore the children must follow what the parents say, because that is something they can give to their child, that is the best one. Well, so she felt that Roger skunk would again be lonely, and according to her, mother skunk was therefore wrong, and the wizard should hit her back. Like when the mother goes to the wizard, she hits on the head of the wizard, why he had changed that smell of Roger skunk to the smell of the roses. And this again gave Joe a huge surprise, that mother should not have acted like that, and this line of story is not appropriate. According to her, the story must end with what she had thought. The smell of Roger skunk was changed into the smell of roses, and that beautiful smell with all his life would be there with Roger skunk, and that would never, because of that, he would never face any discrimination there in the forest. That was the opinion of Joe. But here the father had thought something else. Through this story, he wanted probably to tell a moral lesson to his daughter Joe, and therefore he had brought that change in the story. According to him, the story should have been something different. Well, we'll move on to the next slide, and this says, Roger then smelled like a skunk again. Well, Jack continued with the story, because as the reaction was shown by Joe, he lost a bit of temper of his, and in a little harsher voice he said, is it dad telling a story or Joe telling a story to dad? So here the girl of course wanted the father to tell the story, so she was quite happy about it. Okay, father only must tell the story, and if she tells the story, maybe she would not be able to do so. Her job was only to listen to the story and put her questions, and therefore she was all quiet. And here a story of course continued. Both mother and son returned home. Here this point, if we understand, both of them had gone to the house of wizard. The wizard was scolded by the mother, hit upon the head of the wizard, and mother skunk insisted on getting the smell of the skunk back to Roger skunk, and this was of course done. And when both of them went back, here the point is to be understood whether Roger skunk was happy because of that. So I must tell you here quite importantly, as it must have been convinced by the mother, Roger skunk must have been completely convinced by the mother that your identity is that of a stinking smell. So if you are even changing it, it is not correct, because this is not being original, this is not being natural, and therefore mother must have convinced him, let us be as we are. So I think in last class of mine I told you, it is never so easy to be what we are, because generally we have to change as per the requirements of the society, as per the requirements of the public around, the people around us. First of all, our own members of the family, then comes the social milieu that we are in. Then according to that, again, we have to bring out some of the changes in our ways of wearing, in the ways of our eating, in the ways of different habits and manners, even the celebrations and all we have to do, because we are influenced by the society around us. So I told you at the time it is never so easy for us to bring out that change. Well, now important point. Here Mother Skunk was very happy, and I asked you whether the child of hers, that is Roger Skunk, was equally happy. Yes, because he must have been told by the mother, he must have been convinced by the mother, we should not sacrifice our identity for the sake of somebody. Because how long we are going to change ourselves, as per the requirements of the people? It is not possible. We, if try also, it may turn out to be our fake identity. Well, it's not wrong that when we are changing or getting good habits, good mannerism, good etiquettes, some civilized behavior, this is something which is required, there in a civilized society. So this kind of changes would be of course accepted. But when it is something what you are and you are trying to hide your identity, it is something wrong, and that should not happen. What we are, so even if we do not want to show it to the people, some or the other day people come to know. Say if I belong to a middle class family and I want to exhibit it to the whole world that it is, I belong to a very rich family and blah blah blah. So it will not work, because it is not just that even what you just have, I mean to say what kind of riches you show, only by that you would be known to the people. It is not just that. See, the things that you use, the clothes that you wear, and then it comes about the brands also. What brands do you use? By all those things, other people are able enough to make it out that you do not belong to a very rich group. You just belong to a middle class family. And if it is known to me, I must be ready to accept it that I belong to this middle class, group of society, and there is nothing wrong in it. If my destiny or my hard work puts me to a richer or a higher pedestal, I naturally all those things would become part and parcel of my life, and it would be very natural to me. But if it is not so, and I am trying to do something which is not my original self, so it is something fake sort of identity. And this identity is never acceptable. See, for some time you might say, I have become acceptable by the society and people are happy about by the things that I tell. But let me tell you, what you are, that genuine thing, if you present to the people, gradually they become used to it, and instead they become welcoming to you. So as you are, whatever is your background may be, if you are ready to accept, you are more genuine, and genuine people are very less in the society. So let us be genuine, let us be original. Well, so mother was quite happy because Roger smelt like a skunk again, and that was the originality. Eventually all the animals got used to the smell and didn't mind it at all. This is one very important point actually that we all need to understand. Whether Roger's skunk was then later not accepted by other woodland creatures and his friends, it was not so. Well, initially he was not accepted, and that's what Roger's skunk felt. All the animals ran away from him because of his awful smell. Well, after that, therefore, he wanted to change to smell like beautiful roses, and it was all done. When his smell must have got back to the smell of a stinking skunk. Here, when he must have gone back to other creatures, they might have given some kind of reaction. Of course, it is not mentioned in the story directly. That is what we can assume. So even after that, when they must have understood the original nature of Roger skunk is so good that we shouldn't bother about the stinking smell. So, and if that smell is gone, or we do not think about smell, so everything is good about Roger skunk. And maybe because of this, they must have accepted Rojas skunk. So eventually all the animals got used to his smell and didn't mind it at all. So this I think is quite clear to you. I am moving on to the next slide. And Joe called mother skunk stupid. This is something about, you know, the reaction, I can say, the reaction shown by this little girl. Time and again she shows the reactions as the story is being narrated by her father. The father is bringing out his own originality there in the story. There is also one reason, I think I told you in one of my classes, I would tell you what is the reason. Well, the reason is, today I tell you, the reason is a father must have, you know, undergone this kind of harsh realities, and or I must say an ill treatment by the society, and that is why, you know, he wanted to have the characters someday in the story wherein this brutal behavior to the character is brought out, and that is what actually he does there in the character of Rojas skunk. So maybe in his past he must have faced such bad time, or you can say harsh time, or you can say ill treatment, and that is why see, my point here to make very important one, whatever is our past, whatever the kind of, you know, the social and family background that we have got, accordingly our personality is formed. Very simple example, I'll just quote it to you. Why we are Indians? Why are we, even if we give ourselves names as, you know, something like Mr. Frederick or something else, Mr. Francis or something like that. So do you think that just by giving this name we turn out to be any European or, you know, any such outsider? It's not possible. You know why? The kind of environment that we live in, the kind of culture that we are part of, the kind of society that we are part of, the kind of family, you know, teachings that we are part of, they are all there to contribute us, making us Indian with all those typicality of ours. You know, hum aise bhi hai, hum hai waise bhi. So all those qualities, of course, you can imagine. And what I mean to say, like the English language also that we speak, it is typical Indian English. Of course, there are little variations. Like we go to the northern part of our country, then the English spoken there is little harsher sort of thing, and that tinge of it you will of course notice. You go to Delhi, you go to Haryana, you go to Chandigarh, come down to, you know, Rajasthan. So the kind of you know, intonation that do they have for the English language, you can make it out of course. Then you go to the southern part of the country, again it's influence of that native places seen. But overall, when it is to be made out, whether it is Indian English, yes, of course it is Indian English, because we do not you know, follow the exact pattern that the Britishers do. We call table as a table, while a Britisher would not pronounce a table as a table, it's a table. And when you pronounce something like that, you know, the expressions on your face and all, they would be so different that would make you stand different from the crowd, the Indian crowd, I mean to say. Now, I think my point is, of course, a bit clear. Okay, the originality that we have, it never goes, because we are a part of it. And Joe was showing reaction to father's story, because father was telling the story which was not expected by you know, the daughter. The daughter expected a happy end of the story. There it should have ended, but it did not. It proceeded. And here I told you just before some time, okay, it has a background of father's I can say ill treatment in the past, and so he has brought it down here. People did not mix up with Rojas skunk. Maybe a kind of similar experience the father might have had, and so he wanted to bring it to the notice, you know, in the story somewhere. That is stream of consciousness. There is one technique of telling the story, stream of consciousness. As at this moment I am teaching you, it's not that my teaching is all, my mind is completely in that teaching itself. Beyond that also there is somewhere that point wherein my subconscious mind is still working, and which is not my classroom. And that is the reality, which probably you know, my higher ups may not understand this, but this is the fact that is called stream of consciousness. So when the story was being narrated, Jack, the father, must have gone into that stream of consciousness, must have gone into his back of past, and from there he must have included some elements of his there while telling the story. Now here let's see. So Joe still could not relate to the story, because according to her the story should have ended when Roger's skunk smell must have been changed into the smell of the beautiful roses, but it did not, and therefore Joe was not quite happy, and she was not able to understand what the father is ultimately trying to tell through the story. So she was not able to relate it to the story. So she called Mother Skunk stupid. Now, it is possible something like before some time there was an interruption because we had paused it. I wanted to use the PPTs and also this one screen here for you. So for some time when the video was not being played to you people, maybe some of you might have given a very abrupt kind of reaction or angry sort of reaction. What stupid kind of technology are we following, or we are not very much abreast with the technology. So this kind of reaction must have been very spontaneous, or your own network is quite so good and the school could not get any good network, could have been your criticism. So it becomes very spontaneous at such point of time. Therefore, this girl also immediately called Mother Skunk stupid, because according to her, she should not have hit upon the head of the wizard, because what wizard has done, it is something good. And throughout all the stories that she might have heard, this Joe girl, she had all the stories as she had heard. In all those stories, there was only this particular line, and she was used to only this line of story. And so, according to Joe, what happened is not correct, and therefore she calls Mother Skunk stupid. And she asked Jack to tell her a story in which the wizard, wizard hit Mother Skunk again. She wanted father to tell this story, wherein the wizard would again hit upon the head of the mother, and this is again to tell, or I mean to say, teach a lesson to the mother. What you have done is wrong. Your son has been benefited by getting the roses of the smell of the roses, and so you should be happy. Why are you, forcing him to smell bad like any skunk? It is not something good. So this was probably in her mind, and so she wanted her father to tell the story, wherein wizard would hit upon the head of the mother again. Jack tried to reason with her. That means Jack, of course, wanted to tell her what you are telling is not correct, because that was something which was not the real personality of Roger Skunk. All the skunks smell, and what was wrong when the Roger Skunk had to smell? So the girl was not ready to understand, because according to her, it was the happy end that has already taken place. Next is, he then told her that Roger Skunk loved his mother much. That means the important point to understand is, Roger Skunk, he of course smelled back like any other skunk. This he had done because according to his mother, it was not right to smell a skunk like any other object, not even like the roses, which according to everyone is a beautiful smell. And this, I think, is also there on the mind of the father, to teach her child that whatever the parents tell, it is the best thing that they can give it to their children. And so Jack must have told her, you also have to behave like the skunk, Roger Skunk, who had accepted the change back as the mother wanted. And Mother Skunk knew what was right for her baby, and this is exactly just now I told you. And Jack told Joe to go to sleep. So the point here is, all the stories were told so that the daughter Joe takes a nap, and when she sleeps, Jack would be free to help his wife. And gradually we'll come on to the point of why that tension was there. because his wife was family way, and he also has another duty to perform, to put his daughter to sleep, and that was not happening quite so quickly. I'm moving on to the next slide, and it says he Jack stuck in an ugly middle position, and this is exactly what I wanted to tell you here. Let us see the point as it comes. Like this one is he went downstairs to help his wife, and he wanted to go actually downstairs, but without putting the daughter to sleep, it was not possible. So he had to wait for some time. Still this girl was not asleep, and of course, when you might have gone through the story, you might have read it. She had just pretended that she had slept, and when the father was just going out of the room, she called out to him, and the father then ultimately scolded her and said, you just be asleep, because he had to do some other work, and he had already done his routine of telling the story. Now next point is he went downstairs to help his wife. He felt guilty looking around at the work she had completed. Now this is something what you can say. The duty of a good husband is to not to consider that there are all the domestic works are the duty of a wife only. It's not so. In today's life, it is never so. It's a mutual work. Like life is led by both husband and wife. So it is the mutual duty to see to it all other things are done mutually. Even earning is done mutually these days. Even the wives do earn. So is it that we are going to keep all the work reserved for the wife because they are the domestic works, and for generations and for traditions we are expecting women to do all those work? It's not correct. It is, we have to understand, as a human being we consider ourselves, the other person is also equally a human being, also needs some space, also needs some time to relax and do some just relax and leisure. If this is to be considered by an educated person, this is something quite so important. I think here he wanted to help his wife out, and more so she was family way, so it was his duty actually to do all those works, but he was caught in the kind of you can say a situation wherein he couldn't even choose, because he had to do his duty of telling the story to the daughter, and at the same time he had his duty towards his wife. Now he had completed one duty of his, and he had to do another duty, and maybe by that time the wife of his had already done maximum work. So he found himself stuck in an ugly middle position. So he could not convince his daughter that he could not tell the story. He had to help out his mother. The daughter is only 4 years of age, and she was always waiting for Saturdays and Sundays. Therefore there was nothing possible for the father to convince her. Next is, and now his wife seemed to be upset with him. Well, I can just only say you might have observed your parents. Sometimes your mother also might be losing her temper, telling, is this the way to do? Or is it that now you're trying to ask me whether you should have helped me or not? Of course you should have. So this kind of common quarrel is there in everyone's house. So when his wife, Jack's wife, Claire, must not have been helped for the kind of work actually is expected to be done by a man. She had done all that. Naturally she must be a little upset or little unhappy with him. But if you can understand his position, I think you will have a bit of sympathy for Jack and might say he was not at fault. He was actually trying to help. It was there going on in his mind even when he was telling the story. That's what I related to stream of consciousness technique of reading novels these days. So I think you will have a little sympathy for Jack, and you might understand that he was not wrong at that point of time. But there is something more that you might read there in the text. Well, next is the same point, extension you can say, marital tension between Jack and Claire. So towards the end of the story, we get a glimpse of the marital tension between Jack and Claire. That's something that we discussed just now. And though Jack watched his wife work, he did not help her. This is something to be understood. He wanted to help, he could not help. But he should have helped, but he could not help. I think you are able to understand what I want to convey. He wanted to help, but he was so helpless that he could not choose between these two, whether he should help his wife or he should put the daughter to sleep. And in both the situation, it's his presence is required. Wife is family way, and so his duty is towards his wife, but he could not do so. The daughter is only 4 years of age, and it was a routine for her. She must have been waiting all these days for Saturdays and Sundays, and that was an appropriate time for the daughter to get stories from the father. So he was caught a dilemma, and it was unraveled for him, and he could not choose particular one. Well, that was all right, but when he came down and he found his wife still doing the work, he should not have let this happen. And when he let her do the work, here I would say we can say male chauvinism, this term is generally used, that is male domination. And this is all because when somebody else is doing the work, or any other members of the family, especially women, they are performing the work. So male members might generally feel it is their duty and there is nothing wrong if they are doing. And even if male members try to do it, they would not be able to do it that well. And it is of course an excuse, because they never want to do it. And see, 10 times you try one particular thing. Do you think that always you are going to repeat the same kind of mistake? It's not so. You are going to learn from your mistakes, and later on, you are going to turn out to be a better person to perform the same duties. Therefore, there is a kind of tension between Jack and Claire. Claire felt that he should have, once he has come down, he should have helped me. But he did not propose to help her. And that is what must have made her feel a little upset about it. He did not help her, and he felt that both of them were caged together in a kind of condition. Neither is she speaking anything, and nor is he. I think I was asked this question, I think maybe by Aman Hussain in my first class. There I had given one explanation. Now, in the line of the story as we have proceeded. So here, if we just try to understand, they felt caged together. Here I mean to say, neither could she speak anything on that situation, nor did he gather courage to speak out something, on that particular situation. And next point is this: he did not want to speak with her and work with her or touch her. This is something I must say, as I told you earlier, it is the attitude of male domination. The male members generally, once they have some ego in them, they do not surrender. And in our society, we have generally noticed it is the female character, or you can say the women members of the family, they generally surrender, they generally give in, and they feel that if they have to keep the bond intact of the family, then they must surrender, and that they have always been sacrificing all that. So he did not actually surrender. He did not want to speak with her, work with her, or touch her. That is showing his concern towards his wife. Now going on to the next slide, which tells only the difficult words. Well, if I skip this, and may I require some help from my colleague? Excuse me, please, Shukla sir. Now I think explanation is done, and we'll just switch over to one or two questions so that this chapter is done today itself. These difficult words you can of course check. So just bear with us for some 30 seconds, and I'll be there just right in front of you in full screen, and we'll reading out some questions for you. I just need full screen, that's it. Yeah. So let's get back. And having gone through all the slides, I think with the help of these PPTs, of course we tried to understand the whole chapter, and very nicely, it was all covered over there, and these slides are already there in the modules sent by AES. Of course you can just go back to those slides again, and still you face some kind of difficulties, you can put them to me. Well, one or two questions let us see here quickly, and we'll be able to finish this chapter. The first question here is, what is the moral issue that the story raises? Well, I think in my today's explanation, I explained to you the parental way of bringing up their children. What do they want? Children must understand that whatever is decided by parents, or whatever do they think is right for their children, is to be accepted by the children. And this is something very difficult. Here in the story, of course you understand the girl is only 4 years of age, and still she has various questions to certain things. And when it comes to you people, especially in the teenage, you are not ready to accept whatever is told by your parents. You mean to say there is something different, there is something which your parents are probably not able to understand. But through this story, of course, you must try to understand their perspective. See, generally why clash comes, because we fail to understand the perspective of a person. You put yourself in the place of your parents, and you will find that it's never so easy. We generally criticize our higher ups, maybe our bosses, or even the government. They government is not able to do this and that, and this should have been done, that should have been done. Even while you are watching some sports, and you feel this shot should not have been taken like this, the better way should have been like this. But when actually you are facing the situation, you don't know how difficult it is. Weary is the head that wears crown. You put yourself in the place of the head of any institution, and then you would be able to understand it is never so easy to take a decision. And so sometimes when their decisions appear to us that they are very harsh, so maybe, of course, but if you see from, or you can just look at those decisions from the point of view of that particular chair or that responsibility, you would understand that of course it was to be done. If not so, there was no other better alternative. So maybe here the story wants to tell us, or through the story actually we must understand that the parental bringing up of their children is something quite so important. See, at the end of the story, when the Rojas skunk smelled back into the bad smell of Rojas skunk, we could understand it is something about being natural, being genuine. Maybe earlier we were not able to understand, and our opinion was just like that of Joe's opinion. When Rojas skunk was happy and all of the creatures were happy, then why did it change? But it was not so. The intention behind is what altogether different. So how does Joe want the story to end and why? I think this is already known to you. A happy ending. Rojas skunk smelled into beautiful roses, and that should have been the end of the story. So why does Jack insist that it was the wizard that was hit and not the mother? So Jack of course wanted the wizard to be hit upon, because he was doing all those changes for all the creatures, all the characters, and here according to Jack, Rojas skunk was such a small child, and that child cannot take his own decision. He doesn't know what is right for him, and so he should have consulted his parents, and since it was not done with the consultation of parents, it was hit upon the head of wizard. What makes Jack feel caught in an ugly middle position? So ugly middle position is just now in the last point I think we discussed. A husband and wife just remained quiet for some time. They did not talk to each other because wife was family way and she was doing all the heavy work that she should not have done in this particular condition, and here he was helpless. He had to put the daughter to sleep, and therefore that tension continued. Well, you also understand it was the duty of Jack when he had come downstairs and his wife was still doing the work. He should have come forward and said, you just relax, it's my work, now I'll do it. So what is your stance regarding the two endings of the Rojas skunk story? Well, as a suggestion to you, you can of course choose The first one, wherein Roger Skunk had been changed to smell like beautiful roses. You might take this decision to write upon it, but my suggestion to you is go ahead with the opinion of the writer. This will fetch you good marks, because when the writer must have thought of this particular end, he must have had something there on his mind. He must have thought of both the sides. All the stories, of course, we expect to end happily, but aren't there harsher realities in life? Of course they are. And what does the story ultimately tell us? Whatever we are, we must be ready to accept. Whatever is our natural self, that we should be ready to accept. Whatever is genuine, we must be ready to accept. So, as I told you in the explanation of mine, we should not try to fake something or pretend something which is not our original personality. That is what that may be the demand of the time, that may be the demand of the society. But even then, if you just remain grounded to your own reality, that will not give you the extra tension of managing two personalities of yours. And therefore, I wish that you go ahead with the writer's opinion, changing back him Roger Skunk into bad smelling skunk is a good one. Why is an adult's perspective on life different from that of a child's? Of course, very simple, I must tell you. When you were small kids and when you studied there in primary, you would accept whatever was told to you. Sometimes when your intellect grew up, you generally had those questions whether things were right or not. You also wanted to get them properly confirmed from your parents. Whatever was told to you, whatever was taught to you there in the school, it was right or not. So it all happens because our intellect actually grows. And I must also say it is because of the exposure that comes with the age. And as a child, you can be very enthusiastic about certain things. You can be wrongly eager about certain things. But as your age grows little higher, you do understand that there is some point wherein you must put a halt to it, and where you should show your expression of anger and where you should not. That all do you understand with the passage of time, with the graying of your hair, isn't it? I mean to say graying of hair with the passage of time. I mean to say, as you grow, as you become older, you do understand all that. So that difference is there because one thinks from only imaginative point of view, but when one grows older and gets more responsibilities, one has to think from all other perspectives. So I think for today and for this chapter, it is over, and we'll meet in some other class with some other chapter. Thank you. Good day.